And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Kenneth Gruenfelder, and once again, it's great to have you guys here on this Thursday. Before we get into today's rundown, I just want to remind you guys to get your comments recognized, and for donations and tips, make sure to go to streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. Again, that really helps the show. And for bonus coverage materials that are not covered by this broadcast, make sure to go to patreon.com and search up GSMC Sports Network. So, now that we got that in, let's talk about what we are going to discuss on today's show. So, starting off the show, we'll talk about some trade candidates that could possibly be moved at the trade deadline. So that'll be the first part of the show, so we'll get into that in a second. Then in the second part of the show, we'll go through the injury report heading into Week 6. So that'll be the second part of the show. The third part of the show, we're going to talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and whether or not they are legit. So that'll be the third part of the show. And the final part of the show is previewing tonight's game between the Denver Broncos and the Kansas City Chiefs in Arrowhead tonight for Thursday night football. So that's the rundown for today's show. Forgive me, but if you can hear in the background, there's some background noise. My neighbors are getting some work done on their house. So we're going to be hearing, well, at least I'm hearing it. I don't know how well you could hear it on your end, but that's probably something we're going to have to deal with for most of the show. So just bear with me as we work through that. So let's get into the first part of the show, which is talking about the trade candidates going into the that could possibly be moved going into the trade deadline. So, NFL released a list of players that could be moved. So we're going to go through that. Also, CBS came out with an article too, with some guys that could possibly be moved as well. So we'll go through the names right now, and I'll give my thoughts on them as we go along. So they start off, so this is with the NFL.com article. So they start off with some Minnesota Vikings. Kirk Cousins, obviously, he's probably, the biggest name, which now it was reported, Jay Glazer was saying it. I forget what show he was on that he said that, but it doesn't seem like the Vikings are going to move him. In fact, the Vikings might try to extend him. But listen, the Vikings season's kind of spiraling out of control, especially now with Justin Jefferson getting placed on IR. And the Vikings right now are 1-4 and probably aren't going anywhere this year. You never know. They could get right. But it just seems like with them, they just are kind of they're always shooting themselves in the foot. It seems like with the turnovers that they've had on the offensive side of the ball. Brian Flores is the defensive coordinator now, and the defense has been, I guess, better than last year, but it's still not great. So, yeah, the combination of all those things, and it just seems like also last year they went 11-0 in one-score games. This year they're 1-4. So, it seems like everything that went right last year is going wrong this year, and now especially losing your best player, now being placed on IR. At this point, it's kind of a lost season for them. And Kirk Cousins actually is having a very good season. But, at this point, they might be looking to tank. But they could keep Kirk Cousins. So we'll just have to see. But that's what Jay Glazer said. So we'll see what happens there. Unless somebody gives the Vikings an offer they can't refuse, a team that could need a quarterback. I think I talked about it yesterday or on one of the previous shows. You look at maybe the Falcons as being possibly a team. The Jets, we don't know what the deal is with Aaron Rodgers. Apparently, he's saying, I could be back by the playoffs. And then you got guys on television saying week 13, which is not realistic at all. I just don't see that happening. I don't. Me personally, Aaron Rodgers is not coming back this year. And even if you're talking about playoffs, the Jets might not even be in the playoffs, so it's not even going to matter. Aaron Rodgers will be back next year. But Kirk Cousins, maybe you trade for him. Zach Wilson's been playing somewhat better these last couple weeks, but I think right now, um, you know, Kirk Cousins, I think you kind of ride with Zach Wilson, and then Aaron Rodgers comes back next year, but we'll see. So it doesn't. Again, it was reported that he might. It doesn't seem like the Vikings are going to trade him, but you never know. So, but somebody else they could possibly trade is Danielle Hunter, one of their pass rushers, and yeah, he could definitely be a guy that teams that maybe need another pass rusher and are, in playoff contention. He's a guy that you could add him to your defensive line, and you got yourself another pass rusher. Because listen, getting really good pass rush. I mean, not to say that he's he was once a very good pass rusher. Obviously, now he's getting up there in age, has dealt with some injuries, but definitely could still help out a team. But you know what? It's never bad to have too many pass rushers on your team. So, so he's another candidate that they listed in this article. Brian Burns of the Panthers, again, same thing as Danielle Hunter. A guy that, if a team really needs help on their defensive line, he could be somebody that you could add and help out your defense. So that's somebody else that they have listed. And a lot of Denver Broncos were listed who are playing tonight, who we'll talk about later in the show. But they have Garrett Bowles listed, their offensive tackle, Frank Clark, another pass rusher, Kareem Jackson, and both wide receivers, Jerry Jeudy and Courtland Sutton. I remember from a couple weeks ago, as you guys all probably do as well, the post-game interview with Garrett Bowles and him talking about how ever since he got drafted, all he's done is lose, and it's just it's very depressing to hear that from a player. So I think he would love to get traded to a team that definitely needs some offensive line help, because there's definitely teams that need help there. I mean, if I'm the Giants, maybe I try to trade for him, even though they're not going anywhere. But Garrett Bowles, if he does end up getting traded, you hope he gets traded to a team that's contending for something. Same thing with Frank Clark. Feel bad for Frank Clark. You go from playing for the Chiefs that just won the Super Bowl to now the Broncos who are in last place in your division. So, he could be somebody that can help somebody out that needs a pass rusher. Same thing, Kareem Jackson, although he's not a pass rusher, he's a safety. And, again, if you need some help in your secondary, that's somebody else that maybe a team could use. And then you got two wide receivers, Jerry Jeudy and Courtland Sutton. I could see Sutton getting traded. Jerry Jeudy, maybe they hold on to him. I don't know. We'll see. Listen, Russell Wilson hasn't been playing that bad this year. And, you kind of take away his two top receivers. And, what does that leave him with? But, yeah, it's possible they both get traded. I could see Sutton definitely getting traded to another team. Maybe Jeudy they hold on to. I don't know. But, yeah, a lot of Denver Broncos listed as their season continues to spiral out of control. A couple of Jets are listed. McCole Hardman, he's a trade candidate. The Jets are trying to work to get him somewhere else. And the Jets signed him in the offseason, and they just have not used him, which is a little surprising. But, hey, maybe the Chiefs can get him back. The Chiefs could definitely use him. I know that. That I feel like would make sense, but, we'll see. And Carl Lawson, also another defensive lineman. Again, team that needs a pass rusher, he's a candidate for that. Hunter Renfrow is an interesting name. I would like to see him traded because the Raiders just do not use him. And heck, Devontae Adams only got 4 targets the other day. But their top receiver right now, is Devontae, but you would have thought it was Jacoby Myers after the game he had the other day against the Packers. But Renfrow, he's a guy that they just flat out do not use at all. And he had a 1,000-yard season in 2021. And they just do not use him. I would like to see him on a different team because I feel like if he gets used, he's a good receiver. And I'm also saying that because I also have him in one of my dynasty leagues too, and I would like to see him, get some points there. Because he's one of my depth wide receivers, and now he's non-existent. They just don't use him, and he's a good player. But Marquise Brown is also another candidate as well. The Cardinals, they're not going anywhere this year, and again, a team that needs wide receiver help. The Chiefs come to mind, of course, when it comes to that. You need a wide receiver, and you're in contention. He's somebody that maybe a team could use. You got Jalen Johnson and Darnell Mooney next on the Bears. Again, a team that might need a corner. Johnson can help out in that category. And, of course, again, same thing with Mooney as a wide receiver. Team that might need a wide receiver, because he's not really getting used. I mean, you got DJ Moore and Kenneth. They're getting targets, of course, and Mooney's kind of like the forgotten man right now in that offense, it seems. So we'll see what happens there. Chase Young also they have listed defensive end for Washington. I mean, again, need a pass rusher. Obviously he had a torn ACL. The Commanders, they declined his fifth-year option. So, maybe Washington moves him. We'll see. But, yeah, it's because he's dealt with some injuries the last couple of years. So Washington doesn't look like they want to pay him. So, again, a team that needs a pass rusher, that could be a guy that, teams maybe go after. And then they got some Patriots listed as well. Kendrick Bourne, Hunter Henry, Juju Smith-Schuster. Again, for receiver help. And, Hunter Henry, I think, he's been probably one of their best. I mean, not that it's really saying that much, but he's been one of their best offensive weapons, the last couple of years. And, again, that's not really saying much. So if a team needs them, these guys, I mean, they could maybe go out and possibly trade for them too. Juju Smith-Schuster's dealing with some injuries, so you don't know. But, he could be a guy that you trade for or get him for cheap. So, but then there was also another article that on CBS, and this is also rumors. So Hunter Henry, or not Hunter Henry, Derrick Henry and Devontae Adams could be moved possibly. And I would like to see that for both of them, especially Devontae, because he only got targeted 4 times the other day. I mean, against the Packers too, his former team. I mean, I don't know how you... I really don't understand how you do that. Like, that doesn't... Like, that's that's his former team. And, how do you only target him 4 times? Now, I know he's dealing with a shoulder injury right now. But, I mean, it just doesn't make any sense how you only target him 4 times. And he only had 45 yards. So... Also, another thing that was interesting, and I didn't touch upon this, they had Preston Smith, a linebacker, covering him. That just didn't make any sense. And, of course, he broke free from him and was wide open. I don't know why the Packers thought that was a good idea. But, I don't know. So, but, yeah, again, I mean, imagine Devontae Adams got traded back to Green Bay or, maybe the Chiefs got him. Well, that's not going to happen, though, because the Raiders would not trade him within the division. That just wouldn't happen. But I don't know. So, but yeah, that's pretty much it when it comes to this topic here. So in the next part of the show, we are going to now then talk about the injury report. Go through some of the notable injuries there, guys that are questionable or doubtful or probable going into this week. So stick around, and we will be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.